Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Hope you all keeping well. It's been a busy week. I'm trying to do a little bit of running outside in the rain, but it's been tough this week. All that rain is just getting everything out, and training hasn't been as great as I would have liked it to be. Anyway, I did Raheny 5 mile last week. Had an absolutely fantastic race. I think I ran it in 32:40 in around that, holding about 4:02 per kilometre. So I was well pleased with that. So that kicked off my season. First time out, first race of the season, and it went really well. I haven't done any workouts since I raced Valencia Marathon back a couple of, well, that's 2 months ago now. So I went into Raheny just expecting just to kind of tick it over. I think last year I was running about 4:15, and I was hoping to run in around about 4:15 per kilometre. But settled into first kilometre, looked down at my watch, couldn't believe I ran 4:02 for the first kilometre. I kind of thought, right, I should ease it off here. But managed to just get really comfortable and run at that. So obviously built up a lot of fitness last year, a lot of strength, and really increased just my overall power output by, making sure, I've spoke about on this channel before, getting that calorie count up every day, doing a huge amount of really low aerobic work. I think that really built my fitness engine. And then, of course, the super shoes as well. So I had a new pair of, I wore the Adidas Pros on the day of the race, of the day of the Raheny 5 mile, and they definitely helped as well. So yeah, so that's going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the super shoes and just shoes in general, I suppose, and whether they cause you injuries. It's a question I get asked in clinic quite a lot when I'm treating people who run. So I treat a lot of runners in here. I treat a lot of people who just do a whole lot of different sports. I treat lots of Gaelic players. I treat a good few swimmers. I treat lots of teenage swimmers. I treat tons of people who play golf, who play Gaelic, who cycle, who swim. But mainly, if you said to me what's the sport I treat most, probably is runners. And one of the questions that I get, like I said, is people coming in with leg injuries. So when I say leg, I'm talking about from the knee to ankle, leg and foot injuries. So stuff like calf pains, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, shin splints, compartment syndrome. They all fall under the one name. You can put a label on them, but really leg injuries is what I call them, leg and foot injuries. And like I said, the question is usually are my super shoes causing that? Okay, so we're going to talk about that today. So to start off, let's have a couple of notes here I'm going to refer over and back to, and it's just basic topics. So you got your shoe, it's just your general shoe. You have the sole, okay, it's the base of it, and then the stuff around your foot is the upper, and then you'll have the cushioning of the shoe, right? So that's just a bog standard general shoe, and you have a thing in your shoe called the stack height. So the stack height, when you hear people talk about the stack height of a shoe, that means the distance from the floor to your foot. So from the ground to your foot, whatever that distance is, that's what we call the stack height, okay? And at the moment, the legal requirement, if you want to rock up to any race, you can't have a shoe that has a bigger stack height than 39 or than 40 millimeters. Okay, so all the Vaporflies, all the Adidas Pros, all those shoes will be 39.5 millimeters. Okay, it's kind of a bit of a weird number, but basically the super shoes hit the market, I think, around 2016, and they are, if you're wondering where they came from or why they were never around before, is you wouldn't have been able to do them before. Remember Oscar Pistorius, the South African guy who shot his girlfriend in the middle of the night? He's in jail, rightly so. So he basically ran in the disabled Olympics in the disabled Olympics for South Africa as a 400 meters or 200 meters, I think, and he wanted to run in the able-bodied Olympics, and but he had those prosthetic legs. So from his knee down, he had carbon, bendy carbon prosthetic legs, and he wanted to race in the able-bodied Olympics, but he was told that he couldn't. So he took a case to the Court of Arbitration Sport, and he actually won. And he raced, Beijing 08. I think it was Beijing. Was it, or was it Rio in 20? I don't know. Anyway, he raced in one of the Olympics with the, it would have been Beijing, or London 2012 maybe. Anyway, he raced in one of the Olympics because he won his Court of Arbitration Sport. And what the ruling was is that you can't discriminate against somebody because they couldn't prove that the carbon in his prosthetic leg was giving him an unfair advantage. So that left a gap in the market. They had tried to put carbon plates in shoes before, back around 2000. It was Fila had one, but the stack height at the time was 25 millimeters. That was the legal requirement. You couldn't have any more than that. So they had the carbon plate in the shoe, but they weren't able to bend it because they didn't have enough kind of room in the shoe, or much what they call real estate in the shoe. So they used it, but it just caused a lot of injuries because there was no bend in it. So it was basically when you would run, your big toe wasn't able to bend. So you'd be able to run maybe about 1 kilometer in it, and then your foot would get really sore. So anyway, skip forward, 16 years, and now Nike came out with the shoe, and it was called the Next Percent. And they now had 40 millimeters of room to play with because of the inability for the IAAF to legislate their sport properly. What they should have done when the CAS rating allowed Oscar Pistorius into the AWOC by the Olympics was that they should have said, taken the current world record. So I think Paula Radcliffe had the females at the time and said that her shoe at the time was 25 millimeters and whatever the men's was, and find out what stack height he had and just say that's the stack height going forwards, because they needed to put this rule in after Oscar Pistorius, but they never did. And they just kind of left it open, and then Nike went wild and came out with the shoe, which is, it's a much bigger stack height than what we would have been used to. But before that shoe came out, I was only talking to Jer Copeland actually on the podcast about this a couple of weeks ago. Like, we used to, back in the day, you just had 1 or 2 pairs of running shoes in your wardrobe, and you kind of just grab a pair of shoes and you're going out for a run. It didn't really make a difference what you wore, you know. Like now, if I'm going to a race, like I went to that race for Heaney on Sunday, I actually left the house, was driving down the street and realised I didn't have my carbon shoes. I had a pair of decent runners on me. I had a pair of Nike Zoom on, but I had to go back and get the Adidas shoes. That would never have happened before 2016. It would have just been like whatever shoes you have is whatever shoes you're wearing, because pretty much all that they could promise you before the super shoes was a 1% advantage. So any company, all they were able to say is that this shoe will give you a 1% advantage over its main competitor. And what that meant was nothing, because a 1% advantage is kind of, the benefits is taken away of you having an on day or an off day. So if you know, sometimes you go training, you go for a run or whatever it is you're doing, you just feel like you're hitting everything, you're kind of on point, and you're running really well, or you're lifting at the gym really well, or you're swimming really well, or cycling. You're just having a really good day. And then other days you have like a bit of a crappy day where, you know, you rock up to go for a run, you just don't feel great, and your numbers are off. And that's more than a 1% advantage. So you could never, if you said your shoe will give you a 1% advantage, even if it didn't, you could just say it was due to the off day. So they could never quantify it. But when Nike came out with the super shoe, you could now say that you were getting a 4% advantage. So that was a massive difference. That's a really big, it's a very measurable and noticeable thing. And it basically meant that you could take any race that you were doing and your PB in any race and take 4% at that time and remove it by having these shoes on. And that's exactly what they did. And certainly they do. If you've never worn carbon shoes, let me tell you, if you're a responder, and this is kind of why the shoes, I think, are well, I don't say a little bit unfair. I think the shoes are massively unfair. I didn't use them for the first 2 years because I thought that they would literally, you get a little bit of a cycle in them, and then the IAAF would come out and go, you know what, you're not allowed to wear super shoes. We're going to put a ban on it. We're going to bring the stack height down. I really thought they would do that. FINA did that 1 year after the 2000, the Sydney Olympics. If you go back and look at the videos of the Sydney Olympics, the guys and girls used to swim in like a full suit. So the men would have like the suit come down their arms and 3/4 of the way down their leg as well. And they were breaking world records left, right, and centre, like they've done now with the super shoe. And FINA just said, no, this is ridiculous. Like, we can't keep doing that. So, and the suit was really expensive. It was kind of, you'd wear it for one race, and I think that would be the end of it. So they got rid of it. And I really thought that the IAAF would do that, but sure, look, they don't have any kahunas to do anything, and they're dictated by money. So Nike was in behind them, and then all the other big shoe companies start rolling in. So I think it was inevitable that was never going to change. So I decided to go and buy myself a pair. But yeah, so that's pretty much where the super shoes came from. And like I said, if you've never worn them, they do make an absolute massive difference. I remember rocking up to my first half marathon. The first time I wore them, I went to a half marathon, and I was pretty good at the time. I kind of looking at my training and saying I'm going to run in around this time. And I went to this half marathon in Bohermain, and I remember to go under 140. I'll probably be about 137, low 137. But I had the Vaporfly. I had a pair of Vaporflies. Yeah, it's my first time wearing them, and rocked up at that race. Went out and ran really well. I came in at just under 132, and I was like, I certainly wasn't in 132 half marathon shape. So that's when I realised, that was the first time that I was kind of like, wow, these shoes, there is a lot of marketing behind them, but there's a lot, there's a lot of talk in the talk, but there's a lot of walk in these shoes as well. They do really make a difference. And that brings me to the main kernel of what I want to talk about today, do they cause running injuries. So a lot of people, like I said, in clinic will ask me this, and I hear people at the running club saying, "Oh, I bought these shoes and I can't wear them because they cause me to get injured." Or, yeah. So if you look at the kind of injury patterns that you would see, probably some of the most typical running injuries that I would see clinically would be, like I said earlier, shin splints, compartment syndrome, calf strain, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis. They kind of be the main ones. I think I've probably ticked most of the big ones there. And you're more likely to get one of those injuries either A, when you've ramped up your training too high, okay? And just remember that. So if you ramp up your training too much, or if you're now ramping up your intensity way too much. And the two times you're going to ramp up your training a lot and your intensity a lot is when you're preparing for a race. So if you're doing lots of kind of extra volume and adding in lots of intensity, and then you rock up to race day, and if you're just wearing your super shoes on race day, it might just be a case that, it was the straw to break the camel's back, and you put on the super shoes, you did the race, but you've ramped up your training too much, you ramped up your intensity too much, you rocked up on race day, which is a super high intensity event, and then that just led to your injury onset of one of those conditions that I spoke about earlier. I'd say that's probably the most likely thing that's happening with people. I don't think it's the shoe per se that's causing the problem. The shoes obviously have literally just been designed over the last, let's just say, within the last 10 years, right? So all the engineering and all the research and everything went into over the last 10 years. So these shoes are literally made to fit around a foot to make you run and to make you run fast. So this idea that the shoe was causing the injury, I think, is a little bit of a get-out clause for people. Like I said, it's probably more likely that if you ramped up too much, ramped up the intensity too much, and then on race day, it's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But also, as well, is that people now, I see this on Instagram a lot and on YouTube as well, people talk about their shoe rotation, and they'll have like a whole load of shoes. They'll have like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different shoes, and go, I wear this for my easy runs, and I wear this for my races, this is my intensity shoes. So they'll have a whole load of different shoes. And what can happen, I think, and what is happening a lot, is that there's a different stack height in all the shoes. So I tend to have just 2 pairs of shoes. I usually have just a training pair of shoes. Sorry, 3 pairs. I have a training pair of shoes. I have an old pair of carbon shoes that I might just wear if I'm doing like hard intervals, but I only do it if I'm kind of ramping up towards a race. I only wear the super shoes, my intervals. Usually I just wear something like a Hoka Clifton shoe or a Nike Zoom, what do you call them, the Vomero, the Asics DV8 and the Asics Nova Blast, the Puma DV8 Nitro. So those kind of €150 kind of mid-range shoes, I usually wear one of those for all my easy runs and all my intensity runs during the week, my interval runs during the week. But when I get near a race, if I'm about 4 weeks out from a race and I'm doing some high intensity interval stuff, like say I'm leading into a half marathon or the marathon, I might wear some carbon shoes in that training session. But those carbon shoes will be shoes that I'm well used to wearing before. So we wearing these, like I've worn them in races, and when I've graduated out them to buy a new pair for racing, I'll use the old ones then for these interval runs. So that's the second pair. And then the third pair of shoes will be the actual carbons that I'm wearing in the race. So at the moment, it's the Adidas Pros. I bought them just before Valencia Marathon. So I bought them around the early December, just in 25. So I only have them a month. I've won one marathon in them, and I've ran the Raheny 5 mile. That's it. So I only use them on those days. But my point is, the stack height between my 3 different shoes, so the stack height in the Asics and the old Alpha Flies I'm using, the stack height between the Adidas that I race in and the old Alpha Flies that I do my intervals in is the same. So it's the same stack height. And the Nike Vomero is probably just a little bit lower. So I'm not getting a huge difference in stack height when I'm running. But like I said, these people who do these shoe rotations have like loads of different shoes. I think the stack height is jumping around. So one day they're running in quite a flat shoe. The next day the shoe might have maybe a 4% drop. So the foot's going from like this to now it's kind of a little bit like this. And then the stack height will go from maybe 25 or 30 mils up to 40 mils. And what they're doing is they're just changing the mechanics of the foot, and the body's just trying to scramble to keep up. And if you start ramping volume with that as well, some people, if you're not used to it, some people can just find that they'll pick up little kind of niggles that just don't go away because their foot is always trying to scramble to keep up with what they're doing. So it's not really the shoe that's the problem, it's what they're doing with the shoes. there's no problem having a big shoe rotation, and if you have the money to do it, then more power to you. But I would say try and stick with either same branded shoes if you can, or certainly don't mess with your stack height too much in the early days. If you've been doing this for a couple of months, couple of years, and you're used to it, I've been running for a long time. I'm pretty good at. I'm fine with just, I can go into a shop and just buy any shoe. I don't need to worry about the stack height or the drop in the shoe, because my foot is so kind of developed for running in different shoes. I'm a bit of a shoe slut. I don't go into a shop knowing what shoe I'm going to go. I go into a shop saying, like, I need to buy a new pair of training shoes just for easy runs. I'll go over to Lifestyle or JD Sports or one of them, and I'll literally go in and have a look around. First thing is it needs to be nice color. Second thing is when I put it on, it needs to be comfortable. If it's not comfortable, as soon as I put it on, I just put it back, even if it's the nicest pink that they have in the shop. But yeah, it's got to be nice, it's got to be comfortable. If a shoe's not comfortable, don't buy it. And you hear these people saying, oh, you need a couple of miles to break it in. You don't need any time to break in a shoe. These shoes are made to put them on and go out the door and run straight off the bat. I think I did a very maybe 5 or 6 kilometers in my Adidas Pros in St. Anne's Park. The 3 days before I flew to Valencia. The next time I wore my shoes was in the marathon. Last year when I bought the Alpha Flies, I think I wore them for a little shakeout run, just 3 kilometers the day before the race, and then the first time wearing it proper was race day. So this idea that you need to buy a pair of shoes and break them in is like, that's 1980s talk. You don't. You just buy a pair of shoes, put them on. So if they're not comfortable in the shop, if you put them on in the shop and you find either the sole doesn't feel right, or something's rubbing along the side of your foot, or the tongue feels tight, or whatever part of the shoe doesn't feel right, don't buy them. The biggest predictor to injury is running in shoes that you don't feel comfortable in. And again, it's not so much the shoe is going to do it, it's that if the shoe doesn't feel comfortable when you're running, you're going to just ever so slightly change your gait to try and find that comfort, and then that will just offset your mechanics. It might give you a little bit of a medial knee strain, or a little bit of a glute problem, or cause a little bit of low back pain. So if it's not comfortable, don't buy it. And if they're not pink or a nice color, don't buy them either. And then after that, it doesn't bother me about brand. I tend to find, for me, the most comfortable brands were either Asics or Nike. But I wanted to try the Adidas Pros this year, so I bought the Adidas Pros just for the race. They're certainly not as comfortable as the Nikes, but I found them fine. I had a bad day at Valencia. I had a bit of a flu, so I was feeling crappy anyway. So I'm a bit low to talk about how I felt in the shoes. The shoes didn't feel overly comfortable. I think it was just a systemic thing. I don't think it was the shoe. They felt totally fine. They felt really good in Rahimi. So I don't really want to put the jury out on how I feel about the Adidas Pros, because, like I said, there was a lot of other stuff going on today at Valencia. But like I said, I pretty much wore them out of the box. So yeah, for me, I usually go with Asics. I love the Asics Nova Blast, and I really like the Nike Alpha Flies. But my Alpha Flies fell apart. The pair I bought last year, I bought them for Valencia 2025. I think I ran Valencia Marathon, Dublin Marathon in October. They fell apart in Dublin Marathon. I think I might have ran a half marathon. Yeah, the half marathon and the 10 mile. That's it. I think I got maybe the 150 miles, and that was them done. So yeah, they're not the carbon shoes or the super shoes are not something that you should be training in. You could, in theory, train in them, but I wouldn't, because when you do, if you're doing fitness training, if you want to get fitter and faster, okay, if you're doing interval training, most people think when you're doing interval training, so running fast, that they're trying to develop their kind of cardiovascular system, and you will a little bit, but the main goal of running intervals is to increase what we call your neuromuscular facilitation of your muscles. So giving your muscles the kind of muscle memory and the ability to turn over quickly, so to contract and relax really fast, okay? And when you do that, you want to be running as fast as you can. So anytime you do your intervals, you never do your intervals into a headwind. You always do, if there's a tailwind, use the tailwind to aid you doing them. And you never do them uphill. So if there's an uphill, if there's an incline or decline, you're better off doing them with the slight decline. Not a massive decline, but if there's no flat road, you're better off using the slight decline. And the reason for that, using the tailwind or the decline, is when you're doing your intervals, you want the turnover to be as big as it can, and therefore aid your nervous system to be able to teach your muscles that they can, and your joints, that they can move at this speed and this power. If you do them the opposite way around, into headwind or up a hill, you don't get that turnover. So you're not going to get you'll get the cardiovascular effect, but you won't get the nervous system, the neuromuscular facilitation. And that's what we're looking for. So doing those training session with carbon shoes will help you. You will be a little bit faster. But if you can teach your body to do them in just regular shoes without the carbon sole, so you're basically doing them at your normal kind of speed that you have the ability to do. When you rock up and race day, you can add 4% to that because that's what the shoe is marketed to give you. So I would say like I mentioned earlier, I do them on 1 or 2 interval sessions before the race. I'll do them, and that's just to get used to the mechanics of the shoe that I'm going to talk about in a second. But I don't use them for training because I like to get my training done at, let's call it, base level, and then get the effect of the shoe on race day. Some people, and there's no right or wrong way about this, some people like to get the effect, to get that neuromuscular effect all the way through the year by doing interval session in the carbon shoe, and therefore they don't really rely on getting the benefit of the carbon shoe on race day because they think they've built up the effect over the year. There's no wrong way or right way. I just prefer to do it my way. I think my way is the right way, but somebody else could say their ways, and you could argue about it all day. It's which came first, the chicken or the egg. So I just like to do it that way around. So it's a lot cheaper as well because carbon shoes are really expensive and you don't get much mileage out of them. I think last year I had the Puma Deviates. I think I got about 800 or 900 kilometers out of them before I bought a new pair. When I bought the new shoes, I went with the Nike Vomeros, and I'm probably up around more than 900 kilometers in those. So yeah, you don't have to try out your shoes if you get to, like, some people say, oh, after 500 kilometers, like, I had a pair of Adidas Ultra Boosts one year. I think I got 1,500 kilometers, just easy running, and it's class. And the Asics Nova Blast, I usually get up around 1,000 kilometers in those as well. I want to talk about the mechanics. So when you wear the carbon shoes, this is again why I don't really like when I see people doing the shoe rotation. So when I put on my Vaporflies, I feel that I'm a bit unsteady, kind of in a lateral way. So going sideways. When I turn a corner of them, I almost feel that I need to kind of calibrate myself when going around the corner. And once I turn 2 or 3 corners in the Vaporflies, then I get it. I know what to do now. When I wear the Alpha Flies, so the same Nike Vaporfly, and now we're talking about Nike Alpha Fly, when I put them on, I feel that they're kind of throwing me forwards. So when I walk, I feel like I'm being kind of, there's somebody behind my heels, just pushing my heels forward. That's in the Alpha Fly. And again, it takes a little bit of running before you adjust your mechanics, like your knee joint, your ankle joint, your hips, even just the rotation of your spine. It takes a couple of kilometers to that's why I do the interval session before the racing, because takes a little bit of time for your nervous system to kind of realize that there's something going on with the mechanics. And then in the Adidas Pros, I didn't find that at all. I put on the Adidas Pros and they just feel very stable. I didn't have the lateral feel. When I turn a corner, I just felt totally normal, like normal shoes. And I certainly didn't feel like they were propelling me forward. So it's why I would worry or tell people not to do a massive amount of shoe rotation. I think if I was giving anybody advice, I would say go for whatever brand you like, whether it's Nike, Brooks, Adidas, Puma, Asics, whatever. Get that kind of 150, 170 mid-range shoe. Wear that for your easy runs or even your interval sessions. And then if you are going to do a specific race, just get yourself a decent pair of carbon shoes and use them. Maybe use them for one interval session before the race. Maybe use them for a little shakeout run the day before, so you get used to that kind of weird feeling, biomechanical feeling that you need to adjust to. And then wear them on race day. And that would be my kind of best advice. But for the overall point that I was talking about earlier is do carbon shoes cause injuries? My answer would be no. If you are getting injuries when you wear them, it's like I said, you've ramped too much, you've ramped up the volume too much, the intensity too much. Or the other thing that I didn't mention is that maybe you're not getting your strength and conditioning right. Like, if you're running in, let's say, a 30 millimeter stack shoe that has no carbon plate, and then you jump to a 40 millimeter shoe with a carbon plate, that's not a massive biomechanical change. Like I mentioned earlier, there will be a few little things, like you might feel like you're being sprung forward. You might feel it's a bit weird when you're turning a corner for the first couple of corners. But if that's enough to set off one of these, like a calf strain and Achilles strain, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, compartment syndrome, tibialis anterior strain, any of those weird kind of conditions you get in the leg, if that's enough to do that for you, then I would say you need to get your strength and conditioning on point. You need to maybe do some calf raises, do some mobility work, do some stability work, really build up around that ankle and calf muscle complex, the whole complex of the foot and ankle. Because if it shouldn't be, if all things are being equal and the only thing really changing is the shoe, and that's enough to set off your injury, I would say you need to look at strength conditioning and maybe look at the amount of protein you're taking in as well, because maybe your adaptation and your recovery in between runs isn't kind of on point. You'll probably find as well, if that is you, that the shoe is enough to set it off, that you're probably stagnant in your training and not getting any fitter or faster. So I always tell people to, the three kind of principles that I think about all the time with training is every single training session, what is the stimulus I need today? Then when I finish that, how much recovery do I need after I've applied that stimulus? And then am I getting adaptations? The way to find out if you're doing all those three is you should be progressing. So, and that's the adaptation taking place. So if I'm doing intervals, let's say I'm doing 800s every week for 4 weeks, by the fourth week, the 800, I should be a little bit quicker on some of the intervals and feel that I can do a little bit more for the same rate of perceived exertion. And if I'm going backwards, that means I'm not getting enough adaptations for the training that I'm applying to myself. So therefore, my recovery is probably not right, or the stimulus I'm applying before that is too much. So you just need to go back and look at that. And if you're getting injuries because of a certain shoe you're wearing, you've certainly got something wrong in your stimulus you're applying, how you're doing your recovery. You're probably not even thinking about your recovery, but recovery is it's probably the most important training aspect that you need to make sure you're on point with. People are all over it saying, I do my easy runs, or I go to my gym, I do my this, I do that, I take my protein shake, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and you never hear them talking about what they're doing for recovery. So make sure that your recovery is on point if you want to stay injury free and if you want to stay healthy. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. I'll just have a look and see if there's any questions there. There's no denying they make a big difference and have Kipling, KD, yeah. 2 and a few pairs of learning Challenger 4 or 500. I run mine maybe twice a week. Otherwise, I'm running my Dynafish. Yeah. So yeah, I think you hit it bang on there, John. There's no problem running in them. If you're used to running in them, that's totally fine. If they're not causing any issues, then knock yourself out. Keep training in them. There's no reason. Like I said, there's no ill effects of running in carbon shoes. It's just I think people just plan it wrong, or they jump in and out of too many different types of shoes, or they change too much too quickly. So it sounds like you have everything on point there, which is great. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope everybody enjoyed that video. If you have any more comments, you can certainly hit them. Do you need to be running below a certain pace to warrant these? No, you don't need to be running below a certain pace. No, that's from Alan. So no, anybody can wear the carbon shoes, and I would say the longer you're out in a race, so let's just say the slower you are, probably the more benefit you're going to get from them. So if you look at, say, the elite end of let's say Kipchoge and those guys, so if they're doing a marathon, they're probably going to get a minute and a half, 2 minutes is probably going to be their 4% in around that for the 2 hours. If you go back to, let's say, for 3 hours, so somebody running around about a 305 or 306 in normal shoes, they're probably going to be around 3 hours in the carbon shoes. Drop that back to 4 hours. I'm going to say somebody who's running around about 412, 410 or 412, they're probably going to be under 4 hours. You go back to like 4.5 or 5, you can just add the time gets more benefit from having the shoes as you go further back in time. So yeah, so I would say no, you don't need to be running at a particular pace, because the shoes will just increase your pace, because what they do is they'll ever so slightly edge you forward, but they will just, what they do is they improve your running economy by 4%. Your running economy is, ground impact time, they reduce the ground contact, what's the word I'm looking for, the amount of forces coming up through the foot. They'll spring you forward and therefore just have you kind of oxygen saving. So therefore you're not going to get as tired as quick by propelling you forwards. That's pretty much how they work. So it doesn't really matter what speed you're going at. They will make you run a little bit faster. I think that's it for all the questions there. I'm just checking across there. Yeah. I hope this made some sense. If it did, just give it a thumbs up. If you think anybody can benefit from it, send it on to them. This will be up there for anybody to go back and watch. That's pretty much it for this video. I'm going to do a video during the week. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to do a video comparing my Alpha Flies to my Adidas Pro Force, what I felt about the two different shoes, having raced them both now. That's the video that will be coming. I'm going to record it on Wednesday this week coming, and I'll have it up probably Wednesday or Thursday. I might do a park run tomorrow. If I do, I'll bring the camera along, and I'm going to try and break 20 minutes in the park run. It should be fine. If I did 32 minutes in the 5 miles, which should be all right. But I'm not sure what the weather's going to be like. If it's lashing rain, I'm not going to do it. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you all for watching. There's a few people on. In between now and the next one on, remember, run far, run fast, run small, run sensible.